all of us know, Wealthy Her was founded on a premise of women working together and the power of collaborative action. And the reason that we have been so successful in what we've done and what we seek to do and how we work is that collaborative power. And Nicole Soames is a woman that I have had the privilege to know for many years. She's taught me many things, from how to negotiate, how to embrace everything we're talking about today, the power of my emotional intelligence, how to understand. And she is a mighty woman, she's a mighty mother, she's a mighty change agent, and that is what we're all about at Wealthy Her. And I feel incredibly privileged that Nicole said, hell yes, let's do this. I'm you know, my fourth book down, I'm going to take a micro moment, and I would love to come and talk to the Wealthy Her network and all of you. One of the things that we were talking about is I'm in New Zealand, as I said, for those of you who missed it, dressed as Jon Snow to cope with my parents' lack of heating. And I'm in the land where EQ reigns supreme in our leader. And as some of you have seen me write about, Jacinda Ardern, an amazing leader, not just through crisis, but historically with the shootings in Christchurch, and even, you know, after her glory, in terms of it's easy to lead a country that's small, that's locked away through COVID and crisis. However, one of the things that I have recently admired is, some of you may have read that unfortunately we had a quarantining system and it was badly quarantined, and some people were able to sort of take COVID back into the community. And one of the things I admired about her is she stood there and she said, this is wrong, we got it wrong. However, I refuse, even though you call for me to sack my health minister, because I believe I need my team right now. And this is a time for team, and this is a time for togetherness. So I think that, as Nicole said, she personifies everything that we're talking today about emotional intelligence. And I truly believe that skill, that understanding will see us through, and it will see the world through. So I feel very, as I've said it 3 times, privileged, but I do, that Nicole has said, I want to come, I want to lead this session, I want to share some of my knowledge and my thoughts on this issue, because this opportunity, because I think it will set us free, and it will create the world that we all want. And one of the other things, and some of you were at the event with Anya Highmarch earlier in the year, I call it the life before, on the eve of lockdown. And she said, without emotion, there is not business. And people have criticized me about being too emotional in business, and I believe this as well. Emotion is what makes business, working together with people that you care about and doing things that you care about. So I think emotional intelligence is our future and our opportunity, and using it for strength and also for understanding. So on that note, I will hand over in one moment to the fabulous Nicole Soames, and also Ed, who is our resident fabulous man, who just has EQ coming. And I'm so thrilled he's not wearing a sailor's outfit that he's worn the entire week, every moment that I've seen him, but he has EQ understanding in leaps and bounds. So I'm going to hand over to my dear friends and colleagues, and I shall probably fade away, because I have a 6-year-old son that's up going, Mummy, when am I going to bed? So, but I shall go on silent now and hand over to the wise.
Oh, thank you, Tamara. I think the challenge next time round is for us all to dress as Game of Thrones characters, isn't it? I think, really. So we'll follow your lead. I just need to find something furry to wear. So thank you all for joining us today. Firstly, just some housekeeping, really. So and you'll have heard all this before. So if we can just keep our microphones to mute while Nicole's running through what we are going to do. I'll do a little bit of an introduction to start off with, and then we've got some breakout groups. Tamara's going to be sending really nice Christmas presents to the people that participate fully in this. So she mentioned that in the run through the other day, so we'll hold her to that.
I forgot that point, actually, which says the people that are more interactive, my team will be marking you. That will be you'll be having an interaction score that impacts on present giving, opportunities to do fabulous things. But come on, ask the questions, get involved. So yes, there is a scoring system.
So I trained you to negotiate, not to beg.
Exactly. And then the other point of housekeeping with regards to the breakout groups, which I'll come on to in a moment. If you've registered with your work email address, that's great. If you've registered with your personal email address. Could you just let Karina know, and then she can mould the two things together. And I think that's a really good opportunity, before I forget, is to thank Karina for all the back of house stuff and the breakout groups and things like that, because me just saying that actually breaks me out in a sweat, because I'm a total Luddite. So thank you.
Can I just add one thing there, Ed? If you're joining by iPhone as well, could you just send me a little note in the chat to let me know who you are? Because for some people, it's just coming up with iPhone or a telephone number. And again, that's just for breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Well, it's been a funny old year, really, hasn't it? I mean, it's remarkable to think that that we're sort of halfway through the year. If you're in the UK, and celebrated is the wrong word, we witnessed 100 days of lockdown. And sort of Tamara touched on this to start off with, really. I think emotion gets a really, really bad rap. I mean, we've all heard sayings like, she's over emotional, that was emotional, and emotions are running high. And emotions running high probably couldn't be more apt for the times that we actually find ourselves in. I think it's really important to take some time, and it's back to that 100 days point of lockdown, to recognise that our worlds, really, be it work or family, have been turned upside down. We've been forced to quickly adapt and face the challenges of change. And let's be honest, is change really as good as a rest? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a Swiss psychologist, explores the emotional journeys individuals typically deal with through change and transition through a change curve. So Elizabeth mapped the emotional states the change journey takes us on, and in order include, first of all, shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression. So it's a very cheerful journey, isn't it? And then finally, acceptance. Now, if you run this in conjunction with the fact that we have caveman or cavewoman hardwiring to thrive in groups, which makes us feel safe and secure. So lockdowns and the isolation that has come with them mean that this feeling of security for many has disappeared. The chat over the photocopier has gone, the gossip in the coffee shop has gone, the off-the-cuff chat with one of our peers has also gone as well. So we have lost some of our tools of connection, and we really need new ones. And it's something that we've talked about through some of the media pieces that we've done sort of fairly recently with Forbes. At the same time, our news feeds are full of stories of how the coronavirus pandemic is affecting women's confidence, earning power, and also education. The distinction between the real you and the role you has been muddied. So highly emotional, you bet. I mean, the great news today is we have some time to explore the positive benefits of being in touch and aware of our emotions. It may interest you that stats show that 85% of our success is driven by emotional intelligence and not technical knowledge. Emotions, or our EQ, can provide an essential skill set for success. So to help us explore this further, I'm delighted to introduce and welcome emotional intelligence, I need to put my teeth in this morning, emotional intelligence aficionado, the First Lady of Feelings, Nicole Soames, who will help us to take some steps to understand and unleash the potential of emotional intelligence from reforming yourself in the new normal, refocusing how you connect and engage. And I think the exciting bit for me really is this reimagination. I put better future, but it may be a different future. It may be a new future. There's going to be some breakout groups. So there's also a little effort from you. And yes, remembers Tamara's Christmas promise. There'll also be some opportunities to ask questions either throughout the webinar meeting, or we can actually do that at the end. The important thing is that we want to make sure that you all feel relaxed, engaged, with friends. You'll notice it says recording on the top left-hand side of your screen. We're going to turn that off in a moment because we just wanted to record the introduction and also some wise words from Nicole, who I will hand over to now. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Tamara, for those warm words of introduction. I feel under pressure now to deliver some aficionado expertise. And I suppose what I would do as an introduction is explain to you all, I've been in the people business for many, many years. And about 8 years ago, I discovered emotional intelligence. I always knew there was something missing in my armory and my skill set. I knew there was a missing link. And when I discovered emotional intelligence, it was literally like my epiphany moment, my EQ, my eureka moment. And I literally have made it my business to show people how, it's my mission in life, is to show people how you can unlock and unleash your potential by weaving EQ into your everyday conversations. And EQ is the shorthand terminology for emotional intelligence. It actually stands for emotional quotient. And your EQ can be measured in a very similar way to your IQ. You can actually find out what your emotional intelligence levels are. And on the one hand, that's really interesting, but actually it's only information. It's what you do with it that's really important. And EQ is an intelligence. By the end of the session, look, I don't know about you guys, but I've sat on many webinars over the last, many more than I would have done in the old world. I've sat on so many webinars, and I'm really conscious when I sit on those webinars that I just desperately want something back from the webinar. I don't just want to sit and listen. So that's why I wanted to make this as an interactive session as possible. So as everyone has mentioned so far, you will be dragged at some point into some breakout rooms, but I do want you to open up and have a conversation, because I think it's the power of connecting with each other and processing some of the topics that I will talk about that will help you really leave today's session with some practical stuff you can do. And I think that's one of the challenges with EQ, is it's ethereal, it's emotional. How do you actually access it, and how do you apply it and weave it into your everyday, the ebb and flow of your everyday life? And by the end of the session, I hope that you understand how it can be a catalyst for your to differentiate you and help you stand out from the rest. I do believe, because I know so much about it, I do believe it is going to be front and center to recovery. I think it's going to be front and center to helping people get over this COVID scenario and get back to whatever the new normal is. And I think it's up to us to create what that new normal is. So I'm going to share some slides with you, which will be available after the session. So if we just start by talking about the stats that Ed actually already shared, so much of your success, disproportionate amount of your success, is down to your human engineering, and human engineering is your people interactions. We are, after all, human beings, not human doings. And what I've noticed over the years is how much people derive their confidence from what they know and not how they go about doing things. And the how is so much more important. And I think Maya Angelou probably coined this phrase, or this is one of her quotes, and I think it describes best for me what EQ is about. So she famously said, people won't remember what you did and they won't remember what you said, but they sure as hell will remember how you made them feel. And that's why EQ, emotions, are so disproportionately important in business, in life, in everything. And what I notice when I work with individuals, teams, businesses, organizations, is confidence is rooted in the what and not in the how. And that's why my mission is to try and help people access the how so much more. But if we're going to access this how stuff, we have to know what it is. And I'd be really curious if you wrote in chat box, as I go through EQ, just, what are the things that are bubbling up for you? What are you noticing? What's resonating? What do you even think EQ is? So if things come up in the chat box, Serena, if you could let me know, that would be really helpful. But when I talk about emotional intelligence, what does it mean for you? And just to help you with that, this is what emotional intelligence in a nutshell is all about. So it's a set of emotional skills and social skills. So when Ed and Tamara talk about reconnecting, of course it's highly relevant, because it's about how you feel, and it's about those social interactions, and it's those skills that are most effective at influencing others. And when I ask the question, and I would ask this if we were in a mass group and ask you to put your hands up, but it's a little bit more challenging on a webinar. But when I ask people of the word that they think they most associate with EQ, the word that springs up time and time again is empathy. That is the word that people most often associate with emotional intelligence, empathy. But actually, most often what they mean when they say empathy is sympathy. And sympathy is feeling sorry for the other person. And you have to admit right now over the last 100 days, I've noticed a huge amount of sympathy from the C-suite. I've noticed a huge amount of sympathy, feeling sorry for people if they're hauled up in a bedroom and they haven't got a good working environment at home, or how they're coping from a mental health perspective. But empathy from an EQ point of view isn't about that. It's about curiosity. It's about understanding things from the other person's point of view. And EQ is so often referred to as soft skills. I don't know if you've heard of that terminology before, soft skills. There's nothing soft about emotional intelligence. It's really got a bad name. And the word emotion, as the others had already indicated, is almost derogatory for this for this intelligence. EQ is not a soft skill. It is a hard skill. It's really hard to acquire. It's really hard to fuse it into your everyday working life. But actually, this is what EQ is all about. These aren't necessarily the building blocks, but people with high levels of EQ are incredibly thoughtful. They are open to feedback. They are good collaborators. They are good at not just hearing. Hearing is involuntary. Listening is a skill. They are good listeners. They can listen beyond the words. They are calm in a crisis. When you are calm, you are able to make balanced, considered, sensible, grounded decisions. I mean, how relevant is this right now? How many people do you know in your organizations, or maybe you could reflect for yourself and think how many knee-jerk short-term decisions you've made over the last 100 days because you weren't calm? People with high levels of EQ are really able to withstand pressure and still perform under pressure. And well, boy, has resilience been tested over the last 3 months. I mean, resilience is always tested in business. I think it's just been tested in a different way through the lockdown period. And what I find so interesting is that we are more likely to recognize lack of EQ than we are to recognize EQ itself. So hopefully this is resonating with you. If you could access these things, and if you could access these attributes, these behaviors, these qualities as we shift into the next phase and come out of the impact, or we deal with a different part of the impact of the coronavirus, I hope you can see how fundamental it will be to access your emotional intelligence. So if we think about EQ in buckets, there are really 3 fundamental buckets that you can divide the building blocks of emotional intelligence into. So there are all of the competencies associated with yourself, the inner you. And I've put on that green bubble, reform. I think we have a challenge on our hands as individuals, as leaders, as people who look after clients in organizations. I think we have a challenge to understand how we as individuals feel inside and make sure that we take the opportunity to reform ourselves in an appropriate way moving forward. The things that are associated with inner self are things like, do you know how you feel? Self-knowing. They are things like, do you back yourself? Are you self-reliant? They are building blocks like self-confidence. And it's not just a female thing, but so many people, especially women, suffer from imposter syndrome. They don't value themselves and they put themselves down. We are really expert at that, us ladies. So there is the self-knowing, there is the self-reliance, there is the self-confidence, which is inner confidence, not the bravo jazz hands. And then the last one is self-control. Are you able to keep yourself calm and measured and disciplined so that you can make balanced decisions? So those are the things that are connected to our inner selves. And then in the purple bucket, I've put reconnect. So the purple building blocks of EQ are all about your ability to interact with others. So those are your social skills. That's where empathy would sit. And they're statistically, well, look, a lot of people believe that women are disproportionately more emotionally intelligent than men. On average, I'm sorry to say this, but it is not true. I have to demyth this myth. It is not a myth. Women are not more emotionally intelligent than men. However, there is one building block where we are wired, on average, better than most men, and that is empathy. We have more natural ability to understand and empathize and see things from the other person's point of view. And that's really what empathy is, but it is only one of the building blocks of EQ, and it's the only one where we statistically perform better as females. So that's empathy. And the last ability to interact with others is straightforwardness. And how relevant is that right now? It's no good for us just to reconnect with people. We have to have a message. We have to have something we're going to say. We have to be able to have this terrible phrase of get the rotting moose on the table and talk about it. Don't tiptoe around the eggshells. You have to be straightforward. And the people that can be straightforward in an emotional, intelligent way are able to cut through. And the last category in the pink bubble are topics like, and building blocks as to how you see things, right? That's your perspective. That's your future focus. And no good crisis should go to waste, right? So we need to imagine what the new opportunities there are. In life, we can choose how we see things. We can either see things as fundamentally positive, or we can see things as fundamentally negative. Optimism is the most associated attribute with successful people. There is no two ways about it. The more wired you are optimistically, the more successful you are likely to be. Now, optimism, though, in the emotional intelligence context, is not blind optimism. It is being able to be resilient, being able to take the learnings, eke out the opportunities, and manage mood. I mean, how important is it to have your finger on the pulse of where is the mood right now and to pitch the mood right? I'm sure over the lockdown period or since the coronavirus, you've noticed when people have jarred you because they've pitched something in the wrong way. So moving forward and coming out of this challenging pandemic period, reimagining all those opportunities and retraining your brain to see things in a not blind optimistic way, but in an appropriately optimistic way, is, I think, the work that we have to do on ourselves. So that's what I thought would be really useful to talk about. How can you reform? How can you reconnect? And how can you reimagine the new way forward with purpose, with rigor? And when I show you the exercises, you'll have a bit of an opportunity to chat with some people in the breakout room, but I'm trying to provoke you to want to do this work for yourself moving forward. It's all very well to sit and listen to a webinar, but actually, if you're going to make a change, you actually have to do something for yourself. So Ed and I are going to have a little chat about these things in a bit more detail, just to get you going. But if we just start with, and it's got to start with you, EQ, the foundations of emotional intelligence start with yourself. So that's why I'm going to start with the green the green bucket, which is all about reforming yourself. And maybe some of you are listening to me talk and are thinking, but I don't even know if I need to reform, quite happy with myself. But I would use this as an opportunity to just really reflect. How am I feeling right now? It's quite hard for some of us to access our feelings. Sometimes we have blind spots. Some people think they know themselves quite well, but they actually don't understand the impact they have on others. And that's where EQ comes into its own. It's not just about understanding how you feel, it's understanding how you think your behaviors impact others. So really reflecting on how you feel. How have you found the pandemic scenario? And maybe there were some feelings and emotions that you needed to reflect on from pre-lockdown, because most of us been around for a long period of time. So my feelings, how am I feeling? What are my reflections? Where is my mojo? Maybe some of you have lost a bit of zing. I don't know if anyone is particularly sporty, but I certainly know from when I try and stay fit. And as soon as you take your foot off the fitness gas, then your fitness just plummets. So it takes ages to build it up. And I tell you what, the decay curve comes very quickly. And I think there's a lot of mojo challenge going on for people in the workplace. You know, if you've not been in the commuting rat race for these last few months, habits form quite quickly, by the way. 3 months is plenty of time to form new habits. So if you've got used to a different pace, a different way of working, it might be quite challenging to get back on that treadmill and to get back in that zone. So yeah, I mean, Ed, if any of these things resonating for you, if you had to reform yourself, what would you say your reflections are?
I think a lot of these things sort of resonate. I think it's really interesting, your point about the sort of change of routine, and I'm just sort of reflecting what sort of happened for me over the last 3 months. I live and work in London, and I've actually never really considered this before. But I used to rev myself up to go into work, because, as you say, you've got the challenge of an overcrowded tube or train. So the challenge of actually getting to work was one thing. And I think, to be perfectly honest, I stop at a coffee shop, charge myself up with caffeine, brace myself for the journey to work. And that was the adrenaline, actually, that actually used to get me through the day. And it's back to this monkey brain thing for me, from the point of view of survival in groups, really. And I've really, really, really missed that. My background, I sort of always worked in sort of creative industries and things like that. But it is about what I talked about before, about the gossip over the photocopier, or actually just bouncing ideas off people, really. Because for me, to a degree, our universe has sort of shrunk to a screen that is whatever size the screen is that we're all looking at this and participating, really, with regards to this presentation. And then my sort of personal journey, from the point of view of the sort of Kubler-Ross change curve. At the start of all this was quite good fun, wasn't it? But the novelty sort of very, very quickly worked off. And I think from a change point of view, I think COVID has been an accelerant for some things that have been really, really positive. So, for example, things like this, I think is great. Would we ordinarily take the time out to do this at 10:30 on a Friday if we were sitting in an office? I don't think we would. But then also it's given, I think, me an opportunity, really, to sort of consider what I want to do at this stage of my life, really. So I think it's forced me into that reimagine phase. But actually, I've not done the reconnect and the other one that you spoke about, really. So and it's interesting, isn't it? Being told to sit on your sofa for 3 months, you wouldn't think would be that much like hard work, would you? But it is, isn't it? I think, and I think the good thing about this, it is actually about, if this lockdown's been great for you, fantastic. Reach out and tell people. And actually, other people might and explain why it's been great, and other people then may take from that, actually, well, I could do that, or I've not done that. But if it's been awful, again, I think reach out and talk to people about it. Really, I think.
Absolutely. And what is so interesting about what you're saying there is this kind of get yourself back in the zone mode,
Yeah.
because I think that certainly talking to all the people I've done and all the coaching that I'm doing over the period of lockdown, everyone is experiencing different stuff, right? We cannot assume that what you're feeling is the same as what other people are feeling. And also your feelings will have gone on the journey, that change curve journey that you talked about. Some people have been relentlessly busy and are exhausted. And so their mojo will need to be reformed in a different way. Some people are saying to me, I've actually really enjoyed being with my family, and I don't want to now sacrifice that. So they're talking about taking their foot off the gas because they don't want to, in terms of their careers, they don't want to lose what they've gained. And I'm challenging them back saying, no, change your mindset on that. You need to be more in control and reform your life so that you're pushing back on those meetings that you shouldn't be doing. It's also incredibly fascinating how we've lost our commute to work, but I expect pretty much everybody on this call has filled that time with extra meetings. So, you know, I just think it's really important to take the time to reform and reflect on what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, what do you want your do differently to be. And I would massively encourage people to do this thinking before they reimagine the new opportunities for themselves and set themselves new objectives, because you need to know how you feel so that you do justice to the reimagine part.
And I love your, we're all in this together. YouGov did a survey about the most overused phrases, and we are all in this together. Came out as the top one, followed by stay alert and unprecedented. I still don't know what stay alert means, by the way, so but I'm trying to stay alert. But I think that the great thing, when we were talking before the actual session, that really, really illustrates empathy for me was the analogy you used about, actually, COVID is this storm, yes, but we're not all in this together. We're in the same storm, but we're all sitting in very different boats, really. So, and empathy for me is actually, if you're sitting in a boat, it's actually reaching out to that boat next to you, isn't it? I think
it is, and that's the connecting part. But in terms of knowing what your boat looks like and which waves you're on, etc., it is about understanding how you feel as a person. And look, I think COVID gives an opportunity to address some of this stuff, but had COVID not have been here, people need to address this stuff anyway, because EQ is a differentiator. It is people, I know it's a complete cliche to say this, but people buy people. What that means is that people will make buying decisions subconsciously, they won't even know, but they will make decisions on whether they want to work with you, whether they get on with you, whether they want to do business with you based on how they feel. So doing this work is hard to try and access feelings. We can all, I expect you're all doing this right now, you're all thinking about stuff, but how many of you can say to me right now, how are you feeling? Right? Accessing feelings is deeper. It takes more effort. It takes more time. And also encouraging oneself to be honest with how you're feeling. So a lot of us don't know how we're feeling, so we fake it till we make it. And so I would just encourage people to do this thinking, because it's what helps you get into the zone and get into your stretch zone. And if I show you the next slide, this is so fascinating. So you've got up the vertical axis, how you perform, and you've got on the horizontal axis, the level of challenge you're under. So it's so fascinating to understand that more challenge puts people into their panic zone, not enough challenge puts people into their comfort zone. But actually the area of best performance is medium challenge, it's stretch zone. And I've noticed different times during lockdown, there's definitely more panic at the beginning, but actually now people are getting more used to this way of working. I think there is some sort of shortcuts going on, dare I say it. And you know, checking in with the individuals, they happen daily, check-ins, and now they're not happening quite so often.
Yeah.
So I think challenging yourself to be in your stretch zone, get that adrenaline that you talked about when you get into the zone, you have a coffee on the way in the morning, etc. All of those things that you do to get yourself into that stretch zone, I think people need to take the opportunity to go, so which zone am I in right now? And even know that stuff is helpful.
Yeah.
And this you can apply to how you feel right now, but you can also apply this thinking to how you feel about your boss. You could apply this thinking to how you feel about people in your team. You could apply this thinking to how you feel about clients. Actually understanding how you feel and awareness is the starting point for everything. You need to know how you feel. You need to be aware. Otherwise, you don't know which direction to move in a conscious way.
And I think it's probably useful as well, because I think often when I think of myself, and I'm just making this analogy up. Oh, I hate my boss. Actually, the feeling isn't necessarily hate. It may be that I don't feel comfortable working with them. They make me feel insecure. I don't feel insecure in this role. I'm maybe somewhere on this curve I'm guessing the curve that we see in front of us isn't just a journey like that. It's quite often quite like a metronome, isn't it? I would have thought, really, that you swing from one extreme to the other. But actually, it is about recognizing those feelings, but actually understanding what the feeling is. Is that right? Yeah.
It is. It's about understanding your triggers. That's what I say. That's the best way of thinking about it. Is what triggers me to move out of my stretch zone into either the panic zone or the comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's understanding the triggers, and different situations will trigger individuals in different ways. And you need to understand what your triggers are. And then you also need to understand, well, what happens when I am triggered? What's the impact of being triggered? So there's a lot of work to do with just this, you know, just thinking about your inner self and how you think and how you feel. But if I sort of encourage us to move forward into some practical stuff to help with understanding how you can reform. Here's a little grid, and this is moving us into the first exercise in the first breakout room. So heads up on that. But these are some brilliant questions if you really wanted to zone in and think about getting your mojo back and to understand how you feel about your confidence. Self-confidence is a very personal thing, right? Self-confidence is not, as I was saying before, jazz hands and look at me. That's not what self-confidence is. Self-confidence is about inner confidence. It's about feeling competent at what you do. That's where the inner confidence comes from. It's also about being able to look in the mirror and go, I like myself. I like who I am. I accept, I know who I am, and I like who I am. I am comfortable in my own skin. I am not trying to be something else. And I believe in myself and I back myself. So that's what inner confidence is. People who are comfortable in their own skin. And the people that are comfortable in their own skin value themselves, right? So that's self, they have self-esteem. They value who they are. They value what they have. They value what they do. They value the progress they've made. And they have a positive, emotionally intelligent attitude towards themselves. And that's sort of provocation, if you like, which I thought would be really good to see if people, because sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers. I'm not sure if you all know each other or you don't know each other or if you've met before. Actually, sometimes it's easier to talk to people you don't know about these inner feelings. So that's why I thought it might be good to start the conversation in the breakout rooms with some reflections that you've had. So you could talk about that curve in your breakout rooms. Gosh, that was interesting. I feel a bit more in my comfort zone, actually. In your comfort zone, by the way, your motivation goes down, you get bored, self-esteem goes down. So it's not good to be in the comfort zone. That's why it impacts performance. You could maybe chat about how you could get yourself into the stretch zone. What would that look like for you? And you could use that template that I've just shared with you about valuing yourself to boost your confidence and get back in the zone, so that you are this reformed, consciously and appropriately motivated to power out of this period that we're in at the moment. And maybe you could approach this from, it doesn't really matter whether we've had COVID or not. I needed to have done this work anyway on myself. It's really hard. All the exec coaching I do, people find this stuff very difficult to do on their own. Hence the idea of having breakout rooms. So I will shut up talking now and give you the opportunity to go into these breakout rooms. So hopefully the system will now work, that Karine is going to send you the exercise in the chat box, and then open up the breakout rooms. Yes, you're all going to the breakout rooms. It's working.
Hey!
Look at that. Enjoy, have fun.
Enjoy.
So hopefully, it sounded like there were some really good conversations going on. And now that you've got, well, you will get, I'll send you all the slides at the end of the session. So you will have that provocation and those questions, and you can continue to work with your colleagues, asking yourself and really deepening those reflections, and what you'll do differently is it going to be. But let's now move on. And can everyone see my screen again? I just need to share it. Is it this one? I might be sharing the wrong one. Hang on. No, this is the right one. Can you
that's
see,
the right one.
you can see the next slide? Okay, so now I wanted to talk very quickly and in a focused way about reconnecting. So it's really, what I've noticed over the last few months is that people have said that they've never felt more connected than in their lives with their colleagues than they do right now. But I would just really take this moment to just think, well, hang on a second, how connected actually am I? Have I really stayed connected with a very small part of the organization? So what I'm noticing is people are connected with their immediate team, and there is a lot more siloed work going on. And I think that this is an opportunity just to stop, hold the phone, hold the fort, and let's just think about, hang on a second, who are the people who are the stakeholders of my success, right? Who's really important in my life? Who are the people that I need to reconnect with? And I've got a 20-year-old daughter, and she's just gone back to uni to change over old house and move into the new house. And she was really feeling quite anxious socially. She was like, I've forgotten how to be social. Like, really, for somebody who's quite sociable, there was a bit of anxiety associated with going back, and how do I be with my friends again? And it really got me thinking about the idea of helping people reconnect purposefully with the stakeholders of the people that are important in their stakeholder network. And those people could be your colleagues, they could be people from another team, they could be with your clients, they could be with your bosses, etc. Colleagues and peers. Really think about, hang on a second, who are the people that I have lost a bit of contact with? And I would say really plan how you are going to reconnect with them. And if there are people you are connected with, I'm not saying you shouldn't stay connected with them, but I'm thinking, right, if you're going to make a difference here, make sure that you reconnect purposefully with people that you may have lost a little bit of contact with. And then there's a way of reconnecting with people. So what I've put on this slide are just some thoughts to take into consideration. Recognize and respect. And what I mean there, because we're talking about all of the things about how you interact with others in this category. So this is about your social skills and your relationship skills. It's about empathy, and it's about straightforwardness. And so recognize that this is this idea about we're all in the same storm, but we are all in different boats, and actually your boat may have changed as you've gone through the different stages of the COVID situation. I know that even in our household, we're all in different boats.
Yeah.
Even under the same roof, we are all experiencing this differently. So I really encourage you to recognize that people will have experienced things differently and respect them for that. It's not about making judgments. It's about being respectful and being kind. That's not about being sympathetic. It's about being empathetic. So recognize and respect, and also recognize and respect and remind yourself that everybody that you have in your stakeholder network will have different styles to you. So some people may be more introverted and will shy away from connecting with you. Some people will be delighted to have lunch with you or meet for coffee. So you need to respect the different styles as you reconnect. Don't get upset if they don't want to actually meet with you. It might be to do with how introverted or extroverted they are. Replan your, remap, replan, make sure that you have thought about, it's classic Boston Matrix type idea here, but who are the people that are proportionately important to me? I should get in touch with them first. And how much of influence do they have over my success? Then perhaps the people that are disproportionately influential, but you have a less good relationship with them, probably go to those second, and so on and so forth. So really put together a conscious plan as to how you're going to reconnect, and then reestablish those relationships. Like, make an effort to do this, because if you don't, the more you put in, the more you'll get out. And as cliche, and I've already mentioned this cliche, but as cliche as it sounds, people buy people. Just to, as I just finish this little section off and then give you an opportunity to go back into your breakout rooms, think about somebody that you've got a really good relationship with, really good working relationship with. How easy is it to get stuff done? How easy is it to ask them to do you a favor, ask them to do something for you, ask them to get involved? How easy is it to connect with them and talk with them? You don't even have to think about it. Now think about the people you don't have a good relationship with. It's not so easy, and it can burn so much effort and energy. So relationships count for everything. Relationships are everything in business, in work, and in life. And don't just expect to have relationships. You've got to work at them. You've got to work at them constantly. So I don't know what your reflections on that are, Ed.
I think one of the things that sort of the pandemic has done, and it's certainly what I found out through some of the clients that I have, and this sort of reconnection thing, is, and it is different. So it's really, really easy, isn't it, to ask a favour or reach out to someone that's in your sort of closed silo. Stepping outside of that, you're absolutely right. It takes a load of effort from the point of view of your brain's going constantly about it, and should you do it and shouldn't you do it and all that sort of thing. But what I've certainly found, and what a lot of my clients have actually found, is that through the environment that we're in at the moment, actually people are far more responsive to actually when you reach out to them. And I think some of our mindset is still, well, mine certainly is still sort of stuck BC, before COVID, from the point of view, we all have very busy, frantic lives, and we're surviving in that universe. And asking for things was a bit like you really trying to actually be really quite pushy and sell something. Whereas now I think people are far more open, really, I think, to supporting people. And it's back to this empathy point. Yeah. I think there's a larger amount, or we're more connected to that feeling of empathy. I don't think it's something that's smaller or larger, but we're more connected to that feeling of empathy, really. So, and I think it's a really, really good tool. It's something that I started right at the start of this process, which was about taking Fridays to actually reach out to people that I hadn't spoken to. So it might have been family members, It might have been people that work with me. It might have been people from the team. It might have been people that I've not spoken to for 4 years, and I got really good at it. But it's this comfort zone, panic zone thing. Initially, I was in my panic zone doing it. It switched back to here where I was challenged, but it was fine. So I was in my stretch zone. And then I got really used to it in my comfort zone. So I stopped doing it. So I think it's just about checking in with yourself, isn't it? I think.
It is. And I was talking to one of the breakout rooms, I can't remember which one it was just before. I think one of the challenges that we will face as we move into a different phase is where organizations and people have been really respectful and have been checking in and have been reaching out and have been doing all of that stuff. If you go back to the new normal and that gets sidelined again, I think that will be even worse than having not started the reconnection. So I think keeping relationships front and center and on your radar and making sure you invest in them, relationships count. And irrespective of COVID, this stuff is so fundamentally important. And I would just say before I'm going to not give you very long in the next breakout room, but just a power chat about relationships. I would say that people pay lip service to relationships. And in the commercial context, getting the balance right is really tough. So not a massive challenge commercially with relationships is you don't end up paying for them. You have to get the balance right. And that is a massive challenge when you are selling, when you're negotiating, is how do you make sure that you are establishing and you've created the right type of relationships and that there is a balanced playing field. So relationships matter, relationships count. COVID, not COVID, would be my message on this. So I thought power chat on in your breakout rooms on, okay, let me just have a think about my network. Who is in my network? Who are the stakeholders of my success? Who have I lost touch with? Be challenging to yourself. Who have I lost touch with? Who is important to me that I get back in touch with them? And how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
So I will send you this slide in the chat box so you have it, and we will open up the breakout rooms again. So you will be dragged now to the breakout rooms. I will rudely dragged, and I will send you the next slide. So I'll open the rooms and I'll pop in and see a couple of you in a second. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun? I am super conscious that it is, there are 5 minutes to go.
Wow.
So I will obviously not have time for another breakout session. I just wanted to very, very top line share with you the ideas about reimagining. So can you see my screen again? I'll just share that screen with you. Yeah. And you won't have time to do the exercise, but I would again encourage you to do the exercise. But as I was saying before, no good crisis should go to waste. The proverbial cream floats to the top, whereas the other stuff sinks to the bottom of the liquid. So really take this opportunity to reimagine, reset your objectives. Like, what should I be doing? What are my ideas? How can I so I think someone asked, can you learn to be optimistic? You can retrain your brain. You just need to know how to do it. So optimism can be learned. You are fundamentally wired either more optimistically or more pessimistically, but you can retrain your brain. It just takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And there are lots of tools and techniques to help you do that, which I can talk about on a separate session. So reimagining, grab those ideas. And there's a brilliant technique called the Disney technique, not created by me. No guesses who created this. But actually, if you are, instead of just brainstorming ideas, this is a creative way of brainstorming ideas. So you could dream your ideas You know, really imagine what the most creative ideas, what would you do? Fundamentally, the dreamer phase is to think like, if there were absolutely no barriers, what would the most creative idea be? And then you sort of whittle that list down by going, well, if I was an outsider looking in, what would I build? What would I say about these ideas? And what would my builds be? And then to really hone the list, you then go, okay, well, how's this going to work in practice? And you can imagine yourself putting on a blue hat and a green hat and a red hat to try and create these ideas. So that is a really, really great way of developing like new ideas and to capitalize on the opportunity. And this technique can be applied to any scenario and situation. So again, I would encourage you to reimagine and grab hold of and really purposefully use the EQ tips and tricks that I've given you in this session. So I suppose we've got a nanosecond or a couple of minutes for questions. But before we wrap up, if anyone is curious to understand more about their emotional intelligence, how you can spend, you know, quality time really deepening your understanding of the impact that this can have on your commercial conversations, on your leadership conversations, on your client conversations, I can do profiling, psychometric profiling specifically on EQ, and then provide exec coaching to help hypothesize and support. What does this mean? What does this mean for you? How can you thread and stitch this into your everyday ways of working so that you really do capitalize on that human engineering that we talked about before? So that is completely possible. And I think it was Jade that asked that question, can you learn to be more optimistic? Absolutely. Just need to know more about this stuff. And EQ is not soft. It is an intelligence, and it's easier for us to think about what we do and harder for us to think about how we do it because it's less tangible. So you can probably tell I'm uber passionate about this topic, and you can find out more on my website about the other stuff that we do. I've got a whole team of coaches and practitioners that can help. So yeah, but if there are any questions that people have, I will be really happy to open up the conversation now. I don't need to close this down immediately, but I respect if people need to go. Obviously, they need to leave. So if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, feel free.
Hi, I would just like to say at Tilney, we've recently done some work with the chemistry group, and empathy is obviously one of the big parts in terms of the report that came back. So this is really useful to put a far deeper layer into understanding. So it was quite comprehensive, and we all got thick reports, but actually this has given a much greater understanding of really empathy and what it actually really means. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
I know. Do you think this empathy thing is easier if you're an extrovert or an introvert? Because we were just having conversations about this, weren't we? Or does it not matter at all?
Did you say your relationships are easier if you're an introvert or an extrovert? Yeah,
or empathy. Do you think it's easier to tap into if you're an extrovert or if you are an introvert, or
doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter at all.
You would just do it in a different way. So
yeah.
You would just approach it differently. You would approach it either more energetically or more reflective, in a more reflective way. So it doesn't matter. You need to know how you would approach it, and you need to consider what the best approach is for the other person. But there's no right or wrong. You have to try and establish what's right for you and the other person.
Now, if anyone has anything else afterwards, just feel free to email Karina, and we can get the questions and the answers.
Absolutely. And if you would like me to put you in touch with Nicole, please just send me an email, and very, very happy to make that connection. Thank you to everyone who's joined today. I really hope you found it interesting and useful. Thank you, Nicole, for a really inspiring session. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, everyone. Have great Fridays.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.